At her helm, a man whose iron will was the power that drove her. Her only cargo, a woman, carrying a secret too dangerous to be written.
When people talk about classic Hollywood adventure films, The Sea Chase from 1955 rarely tops the list. It's not mentioned as often as The African Queen or Captain Horatio Hornblower. Yet this John Wayne maritime thriller quietly carries one of the most complex production histories of the 1950s. Set against the shadow of World War II and filmed during the height of Cold War anxieties, The Sea Chase is far more than a simple man versus the sea story. Starring John Wayne and Lana Turner, directed by John Farrow, and released by Warner Brothers, the film blends naval suspense, romance, moral conflict, and wartime paranoia. Beneath the surface, however, lies a fascinating collection of hidden facts about politics, casting risks, international filming challenges, and Hollywood's obsession with global spectacle during the 1950s. Today, we're diving deep into 20 hidden facts about The Sea Chase, 1955, the stories Hollywood never really advertised, but that make this film far more interesting than it first appears. 1. The film was inspired by a little-known German novel. The Sea Chase wasn't an original Hollywood concept. It was adapted from a German novel titled Kapitän Lohmann und die Fahrt der Deutschland, written by author Siegfried von Weizsäck. The book focused heavily on moral ambiguity, loyalty, and the internal conflict of a German merchant ship captain caught between personal ethics and Nazi authority. Hollywood, however, softened the book's political edges. Warner Brothers wanted a story that criticized Nazism without fully humanizing it, a careful balance during the 1950s when the Cold War made political messaging extremely sensitive. While the novel allowed its German characters to exist in moral gray areas, the film streamlined that complexity to fit American expectations. Still, traces of the original novel remain, especially in Captain Carl Ehrlich's internal struggle, which sets him apart from the usual wartime villains of the era. 2. John Wayne almost rejected the role. John Wayne was not the obvious choice for Captain Carl Ehrlich. In fact, he hesitated. Wayne was deeply associated with American patriotism and war hero roles, and playing a German ship captain during World War II was risky for his public image. Wayne worried audiences wouldn't accept him in a non-American role, especially one that wasn't purely heroic. Ultimately, what convinced him was the script's positioning of Ehrlich as an anti-Nazi figure. Wayne saw the character not as a German loyalist, but as a man standing against tyranny. This decision showed a rare willingness from Wayne to step outside his usual screen persona and explore moral complexity rather than straightforward heroism. 3. Wayne's German accent was intentionally minimal. You might notice that Captain Ehrlich doesn't sound particularly German. That wasn't an oversight, it was deliberate. Warner Brothers made a conscious decision to minimize accents, fearing heavy German speech patterns would alienate American audiences. During the 1950s, studios believed accents created emotional distance, especially in films meant to generate sympathy. John Wayne himself reportedly disliked exaggerated accents and felt they distracted from performance. The result is a neutral delivery that feels more universal than authentic, but one that allowed audiences to focus on the character's moral stance rather than nationality. 4. Lana Turner's casting was a strategic gamble. Lana Turner was primarily known for glamorous roles and melodramas, not gritty seafaring adventures. Casting her as Elsa Keller was a calculated risk by Warner Brothers. The studio wanted to balance John Wayne's rugged masculinity with Turner's star power and emotional appeal. Her presence broadened the film's audience beyond male war film fans, pulling in viewers who followed her career closely. However, critics at the time were divided. Some felt Turner was miscast, while others praised her restrained performance. 5. The film was shot in multiple countries quietly. One of the most impressive hidden aspects of The Sea Chase is its international filming. While many audiences assumed the ocean sequences were studio creations, large portions of the film were shot on location in Australia, the Pacific, and parts of the Caribbean. Warner Brothers kept this relatively quiet, partly due to logistical challenges and partly because international shoots were still considered risky in the mid-1950s. Filming on open water added authenticity, but also caused overruns and safety concerns. The realism of the sea sequences, however, remains one of the film's strongest elements. 6. Real ships were used, not miniatures. Unlike many maritime films of the era, the Sea Chase relied heavily on real ships, not scale models. The German merchant vessel featured prominently was an actual working ship, retrofitted for filming. This decision dramatically increased production complexity. Shooting schedules depended on weather, tides, and mechanical reliability. But the payoff was worth it. The ship feels alive, weather-beaten, and genuinely vulnerable, something miniatures couldn't replicate convincingly at the time. 7. The film quietly criticized Nazi bureaucracy. While The Sea Chase avoids heavy political speeches, it subtly criticizes Nazi authority through everyday interactions. The Gestapo characters are portrayed not as supervillains, but as rigid, bureaucratic figures obsessed with obedience over humanity. This approach reflected post-war American thinking. Nazism wasn't just evil because of its leaders, but because ordinary systems allowed cruelty to function smoothly. It's a quieter critique, but one that feels more unsettling than loud propaganda. 8. John Farrow's direction was deeply personal. Director John Farrow, father of Mia Farrow, had strong political views and a fascination with moral conflict. He approached The Sea Chase not as a simple chase movie, but as a story about personal conscience under pressure. Farrow emphasized silence, long shots, and restrained dialogue choices that frustrated some studio executives who wanted faster pacing. But these choices give the film its reflective, almost melancholic tone. 9. The Sea Chase was part of Warner Brothers' global cinema push. During the 1950s, Warner Brothers aggressively pursued international stories to compete with television. The Sea Chase was part of a larger strategy to offer audiences something TV couldn't: global scale and exotic locations. This strategy also helped studios reduce taxes by filming abroad and allowed them to tap into foreign markets. The film's globe-spanning journey reflects this corporate ambition as much as narrative necessity. 10. The romance was added late in development. Early drafts of the script focused almost entirely on naval tension and escape. The romantic subplot between Ehrlich and Elsa Keller was expanded later to increase emotional engagement. Studio executives believed audiences needed a personal stake beyond survival. While the romance sometimes feels restrained, it adds vulnerability to Ehrlich's character and gives Turner more narrative weight. 11. The film avoids clear-cut villains. One of the most unusual aspects of The Sea Chase is its lack of traditional villains. Even the Nazi antagonists are portrayed as flawed humans rather than caricatures. This choice reflected growing post-war realism in Hollywood, where audiences were becoming skeptical of simplistic good versus evil narratives. 12. Cold War anxiety influenced the film's tone. Although set during World War II, The Sea Chase was made in the heart of the Cold War. Themes of surveillance, suspicion, and escape mirror 1950s fears about authoritarianism and loss of freedom. Captain Ehrlich's desire to remain neutral echoes America's anxiety about ideological pressure from both sides of the global conflict. 13. The film's title was considered a risk. Executives worried The Sea Chase sounded too abstract. Alternative titles were discussed, emphasizing war or romance. Ultimately, the simplicity of the title was kept to suggest tension and movement rather than politics. 14. John Wayne's performance is more subtle than usual. Wayne famously avoided emotional vulnerability in many roles. Here, he allows quiet hesitation and internal conflict to surface, something rare in his filmography. This subtlety confused some audiences, but has aged extremely well. 15. The ending was softened for American audiences. The novel's ending was darker and more morally ambiguous. The film's conclusion offers more closure and reassurance, reflecting Hollywood's belief that post-war audiences wanted hope. 16. The film was overshadowed by bigger releases. Released during a crowded year, The Sea Chase competed with massive epics and musicals, limiting its box office impact. 17. Critics were divided but respectful. Reviews praised the atmosphere but criticized pacing. Over time, the film has been reassessed as a thoughtful slow burn. 18. The score was designed to stay invisible. The music avoids grand themes, instead supporting tension quietly, another reason the film feels restrained. 19. The film influenced later maritime thrillers. Elements of The Sea Chase can be seen in later naval escape films that emphasize moral tension over action. 20. The Sea Chase is better today than in 1955. Modern audiences appreciate its nuance, realism, and moral ambiguity far more than initial viewers did. The Sea Chase isn't a loud classic, but it's a thoughtful one. Beneath the Waves lies a story about conscience, survival, and quiet resistance, making it one of John Wayne's most underrated performances and one of Hollywood's more mature wartime films.